Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about my worst job interview. Now I've done videos where I've talked about job interviews from the hiring side, about questions I like to ask and tests I like to give. I've even talked about questions I've received while looking for a job, and those videos are linked below. But today I want to talk about the absolute worst experience I ever had looking for a job. And this came about because I was talking with colleagues in the industry about their worst job interviews, and these horrible ones came up about, sexist remarks and really long tests that were work for the project they were interviewing for, just bad questions. And it reminded me that I usually told one job interview story that happened just a few years ago, but I realized I had another really awful one that happened near the beginning of my career. So I'm going to tell you both of them. The first one, I'll start with the one early in my career in '91, and it was at McDonnell Douglas. What happened here was I decided in '91 I wanted to go make games again, and my thesis advisor told me, my PhD thesis advisor, I'd finished my master's, said, "You're wasting your time. Don't go make games." And I was like, I kind of want to do this. He goes, "Well, at least for my peace of mind, at least interview for a job that I think would be appropriate for your skills." And he set me up with a job interview at McDonnell Douglas, which had a local office. So let me set the mood for you. I show up in a borrowed Italian suit from a friend of mine, smiling, eager to do this. I'm in grad school. I've only had one job before in my life, and it was, at Pegasus, Cybron, making Grand Slam Bridge, but I'm going to do this. Now, let me tell you what they were like. It was 3 people, 2 men and a woman, in a barren room, like framed walls with no drywall on them, and a bare incandescent light bulb hanging from a wire. I was like, what is going on? They all look really tired. They sit down, they do a quick review of me and my work background, which isn't very long. So they start talking about my graduate work, and I say I do AI, graph traversal, integrated learning. They get very interested. They start asking me a lot of questions about organizing schedules. And it's very specific. It's like, what if you had to schedule trucks and planes to deliver packages all around the continental United States? And I'm like, well, that's a version of traveling salesman. And they're like, we know. And I was like, okay. Well, that has no polynomial algorithms. It's NP complete. So all of the known solutions to give you the best, all the known algorithms to give you the best solutions are exponential. But there are some polynomial heuristics if you're willing to get a good solution. They're like, yeah, that's what we want. And I'm like, okay. Again, it was very strange, very aggressive and specific. So I started talking about simulated annealing, which back in '91 was something new. And it was basically doing hill climbing in the search space. But when you got to the top of a hill, you could jump and then do hill climbing from the new random place you jumped to see if you ended up somewhere higher. If you did, you jump from there. If you didn't, you'd come back to where you jumped from and jump again. And it was named after simulated annealing, where you take a metal and you cool it down. And as it cools down, it settles into a lattice that's very strong. The cooling down here was over time you wouldn't let yourself jump as far after each hill climbing. Each subsequent jump was a little closer until you weren't really jumping at all, and then you were done. And you said, well, this local maxima, I think, is a global maxima. It's a heuristic, but it works. I was describing this. They were taking notes. 2 of them were scribbling furiously. One of them looked up and went, "How do you spell annealing?" And I just went, stop. What is going on? This room, these questions, this feels like an interrogation, not an interview. And they finally said, well, we took on this contract with FedEx, and we're supposed to improve their package scheduling, and nothing we've done has improved it. And I'm like, okay, if you had told me about that, because FedEx was well known for having done a very unusual thing where they flew all their packages to one node. I think it was in Atlanta. Did all the sorting there and then flew it back. to airports, and then trucks picked it up and did all the local delivery, because they found that was faster to do sorting in one spot than, like, if you wanted to send a package from LA to San Francisco, they discovered it made more sense to just still sort it, fly it to Atlanta and sort it, and then fly it up to San Francisco, then put it on a truck to go up to San Francisco from LA. Because doing sorting in multiple places, doing sorting here and then moving it to Atlanta and doing more sorting there, took more time. And they were optimizing for time, not distance, because FedEx we're getting there overnight. I was kind of weirded out by this. They had a project, they had a contract that they were getting behind on, and they were basically interrogating me for new ways of doing it. They explained too that their conference room was under construction, which is why we were in this, what would have been a janitor's closet that they cleared out and put a desk in and the light bulb. So the whole thing was strange. So I went back and told my advisor that was strange. I went to the Interplay interview. They offered me less money than FedEx, than McDonnell Douglas. McDonnell Douglas offered me a job. Interplay offered me a job for less money. I was basically told I'd have to prove myself. They ignored my first job. I went with Interplay anyway because I really wanted to make games. So that's my first. That was for the longest time. That was in 1991. That was my worst interview story. Now let's jump to 2018. And I'm going to keep this vague because I don't want anyone to point fingers at people and get mad at them. This was late 2018. I was working on Outer Worlds at Obsidian. I was happy. I was going to get it done. The plan was I finished it, move up to Seattle. Boom, boom. I get an email from a top person at a big company. I'm not going to say where, but you've heard of this company. You probably heard of this person. Big company, lots of IPs. And he says, I have a big opportunity for you. Now, I'm not going to tell you whether or not they were local, but this person said, I can meet you at this local restaurant. So I just basically met them for lunch. And I will admit, I was super, super excited. I spent the next few days thinking, this is going to be amazing. Do I get to work in one of their big famous IPs? And they have huge teams, so many resources at my disposal. Or do I get to create a new IP for them? Oh my God, if I created an IP at that company, that would be amazing. And yeah, some of the stuff they did was very adjacent to stuff I work on. So I'm super excited. Drive over there for lunch. Sit down with them. He says hi. Turns out we had met once before. He didn't remember me. It's okay. He works at a big company, meets way more people than I do. And then he says, I have a huge opportunity that I think would be perfect for you. I want you to be our localization producer. And I just stared at him. I didn't say anything, which, if you kind of know me from watching this channel, talking is kind of my strong suit. I didn't say anything. What was going through my head was, how did I misread this? And then immediately flipped to, am I so egotistical that I thought he would know who I was and he'd want me to make an IP for his big company? Am I that bad at this? And basically I was like, what is happening? And my head was spinning. He realized something was wrong. And he's like, because I hadn't said anything. I was just kind of looking at him going, which I don't ever do. So I explained to him my history, like what I've done, what I'm known for, what my employment history. And it was like a light bulb went off in his head. And he immediately apologized. He said, there must have been a crossed wire. I'm going to check with my assistant. Maybe I was supposed to be meeting with someone else. I'm really sorry. Let's just chat and have fun and talk, trade industry stories. And, I'll pick up lunch and everything will be happy. Now, I was driving home in a weird mood. Because what I saw as a big opportunity turned into, as a phrase a friend of mine likes to say, a nothing burger. And I was super excited, and I was driving home in a very different state. It was hard to process that meeting. So, like everything, I take notes. So, let me read to you. This is this isn't directly from the notes. This is a direct quote from the memoir that I wrote that I will never go out. From my notes. And it's a quote. Quote. Driving home, I was having trouble processing how I felt. I wasn't angry. I wasn't disappointed. I wasn't sad. I finally realized how I felt. I was embarrassed. I had let myself think for a few days before that lunch that someone had finally recognized my work, that someone powerful had seen the IPs I worked on directly, Fallout, Arcanum, Wildstar, Outer Worlds, and those that I helped create, Pillars of Eternity, Tyranny, and thought, let's back this guy and see what he can do with a huge set of resources under his control. And I had fantasized about what kind of game that would be. I had lots of ideas, lots of notebooks filled with potential new IPs, but no, he asked me to be a localization producer. He had no idea who I was or what I had done. I had spent a few happy days thinking he did, and now I was just embarrassed. So, those are the two worst interviews I ever had. One near the beginning of my career, one near the end. So, what was your worst interview?